Today's topic is proteins. Protein is a macromolecule composed of one or more polypeptide chains possessing a characteristic amino acid sequence. It is a polymer of amino acids. The term protein is derived from Greek proteo, that is primary or holding a first place. The term protein was first proposed by Berzelius. Protein is the essential constituents of living cells. Proteins make up 12% of protoplasms. They are the body builders. They contain carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen and sometimes sulfur. They are constructed largely of amino acids. Biologically important proteins. Thousands of proteins exist in the biological system. A few commonly available proteins are given in the table. They are plasma albumin, ovalbumin in egg, lactalbumin in milk, plasma globulin, serum globulin, ovaglobulin in egg, myosin in muscles, elastin in hemisphere, glutalin in wheat, oryraisin in rice, zein in corn, ordin in barley, secalin in ray, keratin in air, collagen in tendons, elastin in ligaments, fibrin in silk, histones in nucleus, staurin in sperm, salmon in sperm, mucin in saliva, casein in milk, vitelin in egg, lipoprotein of blood. Nucleoproteins: hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome, flavoprotein, insulin, oxytocin, lactic dehydrogenase, isoenzyme, chymotrypsin. Sources of protein. Proteins are obtained both from animal and plant sources. The animal sources of proteins include milk, egg, meat, fish, liver, etc. Plant sources of proteins are pulses, nuts and cereals. Nutritive value. The nutritive value of protein is based on two factors, namely amino acid composition and digestibility. All proteins do not contain all the essential amino acids. Only a few types of proteins contain the complete set of essential amino acids. Such proteins are called first class proteins and their nutritive value is high. Almost all the animal proteins contain all the essential amino acids. Example: milk, milk products, meat, fish, kidney, liver, shellfish and soya beans, etc. The proteins which are deficient in any one of the essential amino acids are called second class proteins and their nutritive value is low. Example: cereals, nuts and pulses. Next, biological functions of proteins. Proteins play a crucial role in all biological processes. They are the following. One is enzyme catalyst. Almost all the chemical reactions in the biological system are catalyzed by enzymes. The enzymes exhibit enormous catalytic power. They increase reaction rates at least a million-fold. Several thousand enzymes have been identified in the biological system. The striking fact is that all the enzymes are nothing but proteins. Second one is transport. Proteins transport ions and small molecules. Example: hemoglobin. The hemoglobin, a conjugated protein of blood, transports oxygen. And myoglobin. Myoglobin, a muscle protein, transports oxygen in the muscles. Next, transferrin. The transferrin carries iron in the plasma of blood. Next, lipoproteins. The lipoproteins of plasma carry lipids from the liver to other organs. Next, membrane proteins transport glucose, amino acids and other nutrients across the membrane into the cell. They are called membrane proteins. Next, third one is storage protein. Certain proteins functions as a storage molecule. Example: ferritin. A ferritin, a protein, stores iron in the liver. Seeds store nutrients proteins. Example: wheat, corn, rice, etc. The fourth one is nutrients. Certain proteins functions as nutrients. The egg contains ovalbumin. The milk contains casein. They are they are nutrient proteins. Fifth one is contraction and movement. The contraction of muscle is brought about by two fibrous proteins called actin and myosin. The microtubules of flagella and cilia are built on tubulin, a protein, is a contractile protein. Sixth one is mechanical support. Many proteins serve as supporting filaments, cables or sheets to give biological structures, strength, support and protection. Example, collagen, a fibrous protein, is the major component of tendons, cartilage and leather. Ligaments contains elastin, a structural protein. Then keratin, an insoluble protein, is the main component of hair, fingernails and feathers. Fibrin, the fibrin is the major component of silk fiber and spider web. The seventh function is immune protection. Many proteins defend organism against invasion by other species, invading bacteria, virus, etc. Elicit the production of antibodies by lymphocytes. Antibodies neutralize the foreign germs. Antibodies are proteins, immunoglobulins especially. Blood clotting function. Bleeding is stopped by the formation of clot. That is, clotting is brought about by blood clotting proteins such as fibrinogen and thrombin. Next one is transmission of nerve impulse. The nerve impulse is transmitted through synapse with the help of receptor proteins. Receptor proteins at the synapse are triggered by acetylcholine. Next one is gene expression. In a cell, all the genes are not functioning at a time. Only few genes are active and other genes are remain in the inactive condition. The inactivation of genes is brought about by repressor protein, especially in bacteria. Next one is hormonal action. Many hormones are proteins, example insulin, growth hormone, parathyroid hormone, etc. The final one is thermoregulating proteins. The blood plasma of some Antarctic fish contains antifreeze proteins, which protect the blood from freezing. Elemental composition of proteins. All proteins contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen, and generally sulfur. Many proteins contain phosphorus also. Elements such as iodine, iron, copper and zinc are also occasionally present. The approximate elemental composition of protein is as follows. The elements are carbon is 50%, oxygen 23%, nitrogen 16%, hydrogen 7%, sulfur 0 to 3%, phosphorus 0 to 3%. Proteins are built from amino acids. That means the proteins are polymers of amino acids. The amino acids are the building blocks or monomers of proteins. An amino acid consists of 5 parts, namely an amino group, that is NH2 group, a carboxyl group, that is COH group, a hydrogen atom, an R group or side chain or alkyl group, a carbon atom. There are more than 100 amino acids. All proteins of the biological system, from bacteria to man, are constructed out of 20 amino acids only. This is just like the 26 letters of English alphabet can be make up many thousands of words. Similarly, the 20 amino acids make up thousands of proteins. For example, a bacterial cell contains 1000 to 2000 proteins, and the human contains as many as 1 lakh protein molecules. Peptide bonds link amino acids to form proteins. In proteins, amino acids are linked together by a bond called peptide bond. The alpha carboxyl group of one amino acid is joined to the alpha amino group of another amino acid by a peptide bond. The peptide bond is also called a amide bond. The peptide bond is formed by means of a C double bond O NH group. The two amino acids joined by peptide bond constitute a dipeptide. The dipeptide is formed by a loss of water molecule. The product formed by a peptide bond is called a peptide. The peptide derived by the combination of two amino acid molecules is called dipeptide. The compound formed by the linking of 3 amino acids called a tripeptide. The compound formed by the combination of 4 molecules of amino acids called tetrapeptide. And like pentapeptide is formed of 5 amino acids. A peptide formed of less than 10 amino acids constitutes an oligopeptide. More than 10 amino acids join together to form a polypeptide chain. A dipeptide has no peptide bond. Has one peptide bond. A tripeptide has 2 peptide bonds. A tetrapeptide has 3 peptide bonds. Pentapeptide has 4 peptide bonds. And a polypeptide has many peptide bonds. Peptide chains. Many amino acid molecules, more than 10, are linked together to form a polypeptide chain. The amino acid molecules in a polypeptide chain are linked by peptide bonds. Protein is made up of one or more polypeptide chains. Explanation. Many proteins, such as myoglobin, consist of a single polypeptide chain. Others contain 2 or more chains, which may be either identical or different. For example, hemoglobin is formed of 4 polypeptide chains, of which 2 chains are of one kind and other 2 are of another kind. A polypeptide chain is sum of proteins are linked by disulfide bond. For example, insulin has 2 chains and are joined by 2 disulfide bonds. Distinction between polypeptides and proteins. That means there is no sharp distinction between polypeptides and proteins. Proteins are those molecules which are generally considered to have minimal chain length of about 100 amino acid, corresponds to molecular weight of 10,000. On the other hand, peptides have less than 100 amino acids and a molecular weight about 10,000. The molecular weights of some proteins are, that is, ribonuclease 13,700, trypsin 23,800, casein 34,000, hemoglobin 68,000, fibrinogen 4,50,000, thyroglobin 6,30,000 Daltons. Proteins have definite amino acid sequence. That is, this striking fact is that each protein has a unique, precisely defined amino acid sequence. In 1953, Frederick Sanger determined the amino acid sequence of insulin, a protein hormone. Insulin has 2 polypeptide chains, namely A chain and B chain. A chain is formed of 21 amino acids, starting from glycine and ending with asparagine. The B chain has 30 amino acids, starting from phenylalanine and ending with alanine. These 2 chains are linked by 2 disulfide bonds. Now the amino acid sequence of several hundred of proteins is known. Amino acid sequence in proteins is specified by genes. The amino acid sequences of proteins are genetically determined. The sequence of nucleotides is DNA specifies the complementarity sequence of nucleotides in mRNA, which in turn specifies the amino acid sequence of a protein. Each protein is synthesized by a particular gene. There is one gene for one protein or one gene for one enzyme. Occurrence of amino acids in various proteins. Proteins are the polymer of amino acids, which are the monomers. The amino acid compositions for a large variety of proteins of microbial, plant and animal origin have reliably been established. The sequence of amino acid in a protein is closely related to the genetic code. Alanine, glycine, leucine are most commonly found in proteins, but each protein has its own amino acid composition. For example, protamines, simple proteins found in fish sperm, contains as much as 85% of arginine, but they lack threonine and lysine, as well as cyclic, acidic and sulfur containing amino acids. Next, fibroin, protein of silk, contains 50% of glycine. Next one is collagen, contains hydroxylysine and hydroxyproline, which are absent from other proteins.